The Brexit, the British vote to withdraw from the European Union, is stunning and represents a serious problem for Britain and Europe. There is a risk that Britain itself, the United Kingdom, could come apart, that the Scottish might hold a new referendum and separate from Great Britain. Northern Ireland might seek to separate from Great Britain, for example. For the EU itself, it could send a message to other countries who are discontented. Much of the European population has become deeply critical of the EU, is far too bureaucratic, far intrusive with its regulations, and far too distant in conditions where there is a real democratic deficit, with key decisions being made in Brussels that affect people's daily lives, but that their elected representatives are largely unable to influence or determine. Some of it is a reaction to globalization and the speed of modernization and international competition, but some of it is a result of over-regulation and the difficulties the EU has had, whether with the euro, which created a common currency, but not a common fiscal unity, so that you have a shared government, a shared budget, as we do in the United States, rather than the 28 separate countries or the 17 or so members who make up the euro. In Retreat and Its Consequences, I argue that those who assume that the EU and the 510 million European people who belong to countries in the EU are in a position to take on a world role comparable to that of the United States. I argue that that is wishful thinking, that in terms of the referendum of daily life, despite its extraordinary historic achievements in damping down the risks of conflict among its member states, something that was common for 3 centuries until 1945, that the EU remains 28 separate countries, not a unified country. Its overall power, therefore, is minimized the way it would be if the United States of America were 50 separate countries linked in a loose confederation rather than the 50 states of the USA. And so the argument about the continuing uniqueness of America's role and the inability of the Europeans to play the same level of role, I think is exemplified by that. Now, it's important that the U.S. be sympathetic and helpful in encouraging both Britain and the EU countries to negotiate a soft exit for the British, not a punitive, harsh one. It's important that the British remain engaged in Europe. They're a benign, important, and powerful influence in European policies. Their transatlantic connection with the United States remains critical. It's based on history, institutions, language, path determinacy, and so forth. And it's important that it not be a separation which is antagonistic. But it's really for the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, and her European counterparts to negotiate, and that remains to be seen. It's also important that once Britain withdraws, we try to find ways of fostering improved trade links between Britain and the United States.